So this year we had a meeting 2 weeks ago to prepare for this, and we asked various civil society groups, whoever wanted to make a submission around what they felt were the key issues in terms of budget priorities. We did receive actually 10 by today, 10 submissions, most of which have already been forwarded to the ministry. But those attending today are very much welcome to add, to develop their points into a submission, which we can then add to that document and make a consolidated submission to the ministry, hopefully within the next week or 10 days or so. So we're hoping that that more focused approach will be more productive overall. So my job briefly now is just to raise some of the issues that have been raised at that meeting on the 31st of July, but also subsequently in the various submissions that we have received. So I think, first of all, the main point that came out of that meeting on July the 31st was that those civil society representatives there who are from the regions, or those who have been travelling in the recent past across the country as part of their work, have said quite conclusively, according to their assessments, that the levels of poverty and desperation amongst ordinary Namibians are unprecedented since independence. And obviously the Minister has alluded to some of the macro issues that are causing a lot of problems around the world and also affecting Namibia as well. Unfortunately, it's difficult to point to empirical evidence on this because we haven't had any national surveys in Namibia since 2017. I think there was the Labour Force survey that was published in 2018. And even this year, with the census happening towards the end of the year, we're likely to see significant substantive results from that until mid-2024. So we are having to follow the evidence of our eyes and what we hear on the ground. And that is that extreme poverty is pervasive in Namibia. And the recent reports of deaths related to malnutrition in the Omaheke and in the Kavango regions, to us, don't seem to be isolated cases, but they are indicative of a widespread catastrophe in the making. The other key consensus points that have emerged from civil society discussions in recent times are the following, and there's three main ones. The first one, in view of what I've just said, is that there is an urgent need for basic income grants to be rolled out. The previous Cabinet decision to convert the food bank into a monthly cash grant is welcome, but the numbers of beneficiaries are negligible in comparison to the scale of the problem. The second consensus point that has emerged in our discussions with various civil society groups is that the housing and sanitation situation in informal settlements is dire. I know I'm probably stating the obvious to some of you, but I think it has to be said in sort of bold letters once again. In early 2019, President Gandalf declared that the situation in the country's informal settlements was a national crisis. Yet the situation seems to have worsened since then. And while significant funding is still needed to deal with these issues. And we have a splendid example in civil society of what can be done in terms of housing provision in the form of the Shackrollers Federation, who are present here today. But they are, by their own admission, underfunded and under-supported, although they have received important government cooperation and support. A direct fund for local authorities to subsidise the price of service land and plots and make them accessible is needed, while giving people options to incrementally build on their land. The slowness in developing and implementing policy in the area of housing and sanitation is a major concern. For example, the delays around the housing policy and strategy document that was drafted in 2022, which I think is still somewhere in the system in terms of coming to Cabinet or before Cabinet. The third consensus point that came out of civil society discussions in recent times is that there's an urgent need to invest in early childhood development. The benefits of significant investment in ECD are well documented and could go a long way to improving educational outputs overall. We all know that the way the school system is performing overall is very worrying. And the international evidence and local evidence is that the more resources you put in the early years of a child's development, the better the outcomes are at the end of the day. But in Namibia, we know we have some documentation, some figures in the submission to the minister indicating that the money that's going in at the level of small children is just minute in comparison to what's being spent further on in the educational process. So we need to refocus ourselves on the early childhood development issue. And the submissions that we've received and are we putting together into a pack for the minister from the Council of Churches in Namibia, from Development Workshop, from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in the Republic of Namibia, from the Namibia Housing Action Group, as well as several other civil society groups, are basically in agreement on all these points, the 3 points that I've just outlined. Other key issues that have been raised already include the need to close funding gaps in the fight against malaria and other deadly diseases, which has been raised by FLAME Namibia. FLAME stands for Faith Leader Advocacy for Malaria Elimination. Do we have some representatives of FLAME here today? Okay, great. I think what FLAME is saying in their submission applies generally to a lot of health issues, although they are focused on the malaria issue. And they are arguing that deficient public financial management is undermining effective spending in the health sector, particularly in their area, but also more generally as well. The Umhili Necessity Welfare Trust calls on government to do more to support preventative programming for at-risk youth within the community by setting up centres and supporting CSO activity in this area. So obviously a knock-on effect of school dropouts and youth unemployment is that young people are at risk sometimes of falling into addiction, but also at risk of other antisocial behaviour and even crime and so on. So there needs to be some attention in this area because of the difficulties that the youth are facing at the moment. Several of the CSOs have argued for greater support for the informal economy and for SMEs. But we need to know much more about how the informal economy functions and also SMEs as well. I was discussing with NIPDB recently that we have really very little information about how the SME sector operates and even the size of it and so on. So the Namibia Statistics Agency hopefully can play a key role in this area going forward. We don't want to leave aside the area of the budget that falls directly with the National Planning Commission, which is the development budget. Often it tends to get a little bit overlooked because there's so many other documents to do with the budget, but it's basically the one that outlines capital expenditure on infrastructure projects. I think we recognise that spending money on infrastructure has a lot of short to medium-term gains because a lot of employment is created, even if it's temporary, in the construction and related industries and so on. However, I think there's a feeling that more attention needs to be given to the worthwhile nature of some of these projects. Are they really productive beyond the fact that they create employment rather than they're being built? And more assessments, more cost assessments need to be made of development budget projects in order to make sure that, especially the large ones, the big ones, in order to make sure that they are actually meeting needs and aiding development in the country, rather than creating white elephants where funds spent on these white elephants could be much better used in other areas of the budget. So the Minister mentioned the issue of the VAT exemption for sanitary products, which came out of our discussions a couple of years ago. I know many organisations and even political parties have mentioned this, so I don't think any single group can claim credit, but I know that that particular issue was focused for the Ministry when we had a civil society discussion, as I say, 2 years back or so. And we're very grateful that that has been introduced now and is in effect. I suppose the next, as a policy analysis, the next thing I'd like to ask is it working? How effective is it? Are people really getting benefits from having that tax deduction on the products that are available? But I think some of the women's organisations that have inputted on these discussions, like YFA, want to see this policy developed further. So they want to see it extended to other feminine hygiene products, but also to see the rollout of the free sanitary pads in schools and other key institutions. So we see the VAT exemption as just a start in this area. And finally, while many CSOs I think welcome what we're doing today, the participatory mechanisms that the Ministry and the NPC are developing around budget formulation, there's always a feeling, of course, that much more can be done. One suggestion is that the Ministry has presented accountability reports on their spending on public platforms, where civil society can also be involved. I think linked to that is also the idea that Parliament can play a much greater role in terms of budget scrutiny and involving different stakeholders. And we'd like to see Parliament and its committees becoming more active in holding public hearings on specific areas of expenditure in the budget. So that's just a taster really of some of the issues that we're coming up with, but as I say, we are focused a lot on the poverty issues, the housing issue, and the education issue as three salient themes that are really staring us in the face at the moment. So hopefully we'll now get a chance to explore these issues in more detail as we start our discussions. Thank you very much.